Good morning. I would now invite Reverend Carlton Phipps of the Church of God of Keon Evangelical Association to give the prayer.
Please give me permission to recognize my audience. Thank you. I acknowledge this morning, of course, Madam Speaker and the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Jew, and his political colleagues and senators, the leader of the opposition party, also those who are listening by other political platforms, also not forgetting our security officers. Greetings to all of you. And I hope that this environment at this Parliament this morning will bring to our minds the leaders' intentions to move the nation of St. Kitts and Nevis forward. With these words, I pause for prayer. And before I do that, I bring just to our attention just a few verses of Psalm 121, which says, I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made the heavens and the earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Father, I thank you that we are privileged of being here this morning. We ask, dear God and Father, that you will bless these parliamentarians, dear God. You know who and what the interest is all about, dear God. And so we are asking you this morning, Lord, to be their help. Give them understanding. Give them wisdom, dear Father. Give them a clear mind with good intentions, dear Father. We also ask, dear God, you will grant them truth and make them to be stable people, conscientious, dear Father, that they're called to serve not only themselves, but to serve the nation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I pray that you will bless them in a very special, in a very unusual way. You have brought them here at a time like this, when things all over the world seem to be so difficult, dear God. We are praying, dear God, that you will grant them what it takes even at this time. Lord God, to move our nation, as I said earlier, forward in these critical times. So Lord, help them as they're here today, that you will bless them with the courage, dear Father. We know their oppositions here. And so, Father God, these are critical times where clear thinking is very important, dear Father. And so even being opposed, it's also possible so that clarity of mind will be brought to all those who are here. Give them, the God, the understanding, therefore, to make the best decision for the people of our nation. Hear my prayers on their behalf, the Father, and give them a great day as they, the God, look, Father, at the people's business with a clear mind and with better understanding during this day. hear my prayers on their behalf, and give them all a great and wonderful day. And all says, Amen. The Lord bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Phipps. May be seated. Before we proceed with the next item on the order paper, I would like to ask all members and those present in the gallery to please put your phones on silent or vibrate for the duration of this sitting. Thank you. Next item.
Confirmation of minutes.
Minutes are deferred.
Messages from the Governor General.
There are no messages from the Governor General.
Announcements by the Deputy Speaker.
There are few announcements. I have received apologies for lateness and apology for absence. Due to ongoing engagements, Honorable Senator Joel Clark, the member for Nevis 10, and the member for St. Christopher 2 have expressed apologies for lateness. The Honorable Speaker, Lanine Blanchett, will be absent. She is currently out of the jurisdiction on parliamentary duties. Those are the announcements. Next.
Presentation of papers and of reports from committees. Petitions. Government notices. Unofficial notices. Questions. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 8.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to read a short statement. It is my great pleasure, Madam Speaker, to announce the theme for the 41st anniversary of independence for St. Kitts and Nevis. And the theme is, Together a People, Proud and Strong, Independence 41. I repeat, Madam Speaker, the theme is, Together a People, Proud and Strong, Independence 41. This theme, thoughtfully crafted by Vincia Alexander of Limekeel Project Extension, truly reflects the essence of our national identity. It is a call to celebrate our collective achievements and to continue building a future filled with hope and togetherness. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Vincia for this inspiring contribution. And as we approach our independence celebrations, let us embrace this theme and the spirit of togetherness, pride, and strength it embodies. Let us unite as a people, proud of our heritage and resolute in our commitment to a brighter future for all. May it please you, Madam Speaker. And congratulations to Vincia Alexander once again.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8. Next item on the order paper.
Personal explanations. Motions relating to the business of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Introduction of bills and first reading.
I recognize the Honourable Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg your leave to have read for the first time in this Honourable House a bill shortly titled
Madam Speaker, if you put up for me to
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to have read for the first time in this Honourable House a bill shortly titled Voluntary Bill of Indictment Bill 2024.
Seconder.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the bill entitled Voluntary Bill of Indictment Bill 2024 be read a first time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the filing of a voluntary bill of indictment by the Director of Public Prosecutions in certain circumstances, otherwise known as the Voluntary Bill of Indictment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Voluntary Bill of Indictment Bill 2024 has been read a first time. Next item.
Public business. Bills, second reading.
I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lead the debate of and have read for the second time in this Honourable House a bill shortly entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, this bill is really being brought forward to tighten up the provisions of the Limited Partnerships Act, Cap 2112, so as to comply with international obligations with respect to anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as a background, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, is a global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. The intergovernmental body sets international standards that aim to prevent these illegal activities and the harm they cause society. As a policy-making body, the FATF works to generate the necessary political will to bring about national legislative and regulatory reforms in these areas, Madam Speaker. With more than 200 countries and jurisdictions committed to implementing them, the FATF has developed the FATF recommendations, or FATF standards, which ensure a coordinated global response to prevent organized crime, corruption, and terrorism. They help authorities go after the money of criminals dealing in illegal drugs, human trafficking, and other crimes. The FATF also works to stop funding for weapons and mass destruction, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker. The FATF reviews money laundering and terrorist financing techniques and continuously strengthens its standards to address new risks, such as the regulation of virtual assets, which have spread as cryptocurrencies gain popularity. The FATF monitors countries to ensure they implement the FATF standards fully and effectively, and holds countries to account that do not comply. Madam Speaker, the FATF, the Caribbean branch of the FATF, supports Caribbean countries in complying with FATF standards. St. Kitts and Nevis is proud to be generally compliant with FATF standards and has a follow-up assessment in November 2024. That is this year, Madam Deputy Speaker. Therefore, this bill seeks to bring the Virtual Asset Act into compliance with the most recent FATF standards ahead of that compliance assessment, Madam Speaker. But even beyond that assessment, Madam Speaker, St. Kitts and Nevis always want to be on the side of making sure that we help to stop these international persons who are involved in money laundering and terrorist funding. Madam Speaker, such compliance would allow St. Kitts and Nevis to remain off the infamous FATF black and grey lists. Off. Yeah.
So like you said, off.
Okay. Off. When FATF places a jurisdiction under increased monitoring, it means the country has committed to resolve swiftly the identified strategic deficiencies within agreed time frames and is subject to increased monitoring. And FATF member states and other international bodies will likely impose economic penalties and other restrictive measures against blacklisted or grey-listed country. Madam Speaker, in other words, being included on these lists can have deleterious effect on our economy and our financial standing. And therefore, it is critically important that we also comply for the reason that we don't want an unnecessary blacklisting or grey listing that can lead to our detriment, Madam Speaker. So St. Kitts and Nevis actively updates its law to ensure compliance with FATF recommendations to remain off their lists. The FATF methodology provides in recommendation 24 for requirements for the transparency and beneficial ownership of legal persons and arrangements. This includes limited partnerships, Madam Deputy Speaker. The objective is to ensure that known criminals and those who are involved in money laundering, financing of acts of terrorism, or persons behind the financing of weapons of mass destruction are not allowed to control these bodies, Madam Deputy Speaker. The CFATF has flagged the need to ensure that there should be appropriate transparency and checks and balances concerning the governance of legal persons, legal arrangements, and this encompasses limited partnerships, Madam Speaker. The objective is to ensure that all legal persons should have mechanisms for identifying and describing the different types, forms, and features of its creation and operation, and that there should be a recording of its basic and financial and beneficial ownership. All of this information should be publicly available and should be made accessible on a timely basis to the regulating bodies and, where necessary, to law enforcement, Madam Deputy Speaker. Notice of changes in the ownership of structure should also be provided on a timely basis to the regulator. Where a legal person is not in compliance with these requirements, there should be adequate, dissuasive, and appropriate sanctions against that legal person. In other words, Madam Speaker, this signals that St. Kitts and Nevis is a responsible jurisdiction. We must never become a jurisdiction where people feel they can use us to achieve their nefarious ends, Madam Speaker. And that is why we are very compliant. Secondarily, we also want to make sure that we are not included on any of these lists. As I've said before, being included on these lists can definitely affect our financial standing. As persons who want to do good business and clean business can say, well, this country is blacklisted or grey-listed. We are not going to do any business with that country. And therefore, we have to make sure that we are in the good books, so to speak, Madam Speaker. This is a straightforward bill, Madam Speaker. It's in compliance with the FATF that all countries across the Caribbean seeks to do, and therefore, I would rest my case there, Madam Speaker, and wish this bill safe passage. May it please you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8. Can I get a seconder? I recognize the Honourable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker. As the mover of the bill has indicated, the bill is very simple because it seeks to amend the Limited Partnerships Act to bring it into compliance with the modern recommendations of the FATF and the CFATF. Currently, the Limited Partnerships Act does not adequately provide for the sufficiency of information required by the methodology, nor are there sufficient dissuasive sanctions in the Act. Therefore, this particular amendment does 5 things, Madam Speaker. The first amendment to Section 6 provides that persons opening limited partnerships must now provide to the registrar a copy of their partnership agreement with specific particulars. That seems very reasonable. The second amendment to Section 8 increases the penalty for partners who do not comply with the provisions regarding amendments to declarations, such that every general partner who is in default commits an offense and is liable to a fine not exceeding 75,000 EC dollars, and in the case of a continuing offense, to a further fine not exceeding 250 EC dollars for each day in which the offense continues. Madam Speaker, that is just really to ensure that the partners of limited partnerships comply with the provisions of the Act. The third amendment to Section 21 specifies that notice of change of address of limited partnerships must be provided within 21 days, and other tightening adjustments of the compliance with other sections of the Act. The fourth amendment, Madam Speaker, to Section 22 increases the penalty for partners who fail to file their annual statements, such that every general partner who is in default receives a penalty and is deterred from not filing their annual statements. And the last amendment, Madam Speaker, to Section 70 increases the fine for any false or misleading statements in any documents required to be filed under the Act to a maximum of 150,000 EC dollars. So, Madam Speaker, it is very simple. It is in the spirit of complying with the good governance and the transparency provisions within the Limited Partnership Act, so that we cannot be seen as a jurisdiction that allows persons to hide behind legal structures so as to participate in nefarious activities and to hide or conceal their criminal actions, or to money launder, or to fund terrorist financing. So, Madam Speaker, I have very little to say, other than to say that St. Kitts and Nevis has chosen to be extremely compliant with the requirements of the FATF and the CFATF. We get support, we attend meetings, we do assessments regularly, and we recently tabled in this House numerous related bills, one of which will be debated after this bill in relation to foundations. We've done in relation to companies. This is in relation to limited partnerships. We've done in relation to virtual assets. And all of this is part of the same process of trying to bring St. Kitts and Nevis into compliance, or keep St. Kitts and Nevis in compliance with these international obligations. So we're not seen as countries that allow or facilitate any form of nefarious activities through our laws. This is a process, and I'll let the people know, that we will have to do every few years, because the criminals evolve, and as the criminals evolve, the laws must evolve to protect our people and to protect our good name in the international community. So with those few words, Madam Speaker, I wish the bill safe passage.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. I recognize the Honorable Member for Nevis 9.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I have not been in the House for some time, and so I want to apologize for that and to the public, but of course I was unavoidably absent due to travel abroad. I, however, wanted to make just a very brief intervention in relation to this bill, which is, as the mover and seconder have indicated, is uncontroversial. I start by commending the government, and I do that because I understand very much the pressures and the need for St. Kitts and Nevis as a small jurisdiction to continue to demonstrate that it is compliant and that it is sometimes even ahead of the curve in relation to the requirements. I want, however, to put some of this in context, Madam Deputy Speaker. For example, we talk about the FATF as if it were an international organization with some type of international mandate. In fact, the FATF, which I gather was developed sometime in 1989, was really an idea which came from the G7. Put differently, the wealthy countries of the world came together and they put together this group. And it has largely functioned along the lines indicated by the mover, that it is a punitive type of approach. You do as I say or else. And that or else tends to be these lists, which have been erroneously described as black and gray. never white. That's a debate for another time. So the idea really is that these lists, when we get on them, there's enhanced scrutiny. Our banking sector comes under pressure. We lose correspondent banking relationships. And so it's really a situation where the rich and powerful nations have devised rules for the rest of us. And sometimes, even though we don't like it, we have to play according to the rules, because the consequences of not playing according to the rules can be quite severe for small countries such as ours. And I believe all of us now are well aware of the risks that we have faced in relation to de-risking, and our banking sector in particular has faced the risks of losing correspondent banking relations across the world as a direct consequence of black and gray and various lists that these institutions, such as the FATF, have chosen to publish. Sometimes, Madam Deputy Speaker, we scratch our heads to try and understand why some countries are listed and others are not. But again, that perhaps is a debate and a discussion for another time. It seems, however, clear to many observers that we do not have a level playing field, and that has always been the complaint, especially from small, poor, and vulnerable countries, that we are not playing according to the same rules internationally, and that the G7 and others, because of their economic power, military power, and their might in the world, have set the rules for others to follow. I say that by way of setting some background so that we understand why we are forced to come from time to time. And I have been on that side of the aisle, and I have spent time on this side of the aisle. And so I have been in this House for a little while, and I understand the pressures. I understand the need to come. So I don't want my comments to be perceived as being a criticism, because really, what choice do we have? We have to comply. But I would say this, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would wish our people to understand that our efforts at compliance are not done necessarily solely because of what the FATF and others dictate. They are done because of our own national commitment to the fight against money laundering, illicit flows of money, terrorist financing, and the like. Put differently, this has to be part of our national ethos, that it is us, as Kittitians and Nevisians, who are responsible members of the international community, who are determining that it is in our best national interests to pursue some of these measures, and so to ensure that we are compliant. For us, that when our Minister of Finance stands in the corridors where he would stand and speaks in relation to where our country is, that we can say with pride that our country is a firm believer and partner in terms of the fight against illicit flows of money. I think that's important, so that our people understand that notwithstanding their pressures that have come from the FATF, the CFATF, the OECD, and all of these organizations, that what we're doing for us. So that when we stand up anywhere in the world, we can say with pride that we are legitimate partners. We are a serious country, and we engage in the serious business of fighting against illicit flows of money. I think that's important, that we set that framework, if you will. And so our people understand why we're here, that we're not just here to tick a box and to satisfy a requirement imposed from elsewhere, but we're here because we genuinely believe, as a small country, that we must be a legitimate partner in the fight against illicit flows of money. The reason why I think that this is important is because some of us sometimes can get a little carried away with the headlines that are published. And I continue to say that the media sometimes, important as it is as an institution, can also be a tool for disinformation, and can also be a tool to persuade the public that certain things are a particular way, because some segments of the media are infused with a certain level of bias in terms of their approach. After all, who is the media? The media is people like you and I. And all of us have our biases. No matter how, in fact, I like to hear when people say, you see me, I am not biased, you know. You can be assured that a biased statement will come after that. So all of us have our biases, and the media is no different. And so I don't know, Madam Deputy Speaker and members of the House and members of the public, if you remember a huge international scandal, those are the words that the media would use, involving what they call the Panama Papers. You all remember that? Big scandal, massive leak of documents from a firm called Mossack Fonseca that originated in Panama. And Mossack Fonseca collapsed. In fact, one of the gentlemen has since passed away, the founding members. But you heard all of this, and really what the Panama Papers was about was shining a light on people's private business. And so suddenly you heard, oh, Prime Minister so-and-so and President so-and-so has a bank account in the BVI. There's no law against it. There's nothing wrong with having a bank account wherever you want to have a bank account. But it was portrayed as if it was the worst scandal in the world, that people in public life had their financial arrangements and had arranged their family finances in a particular way. And the reason I raise the Panama Papers is because even here in St. Kitts and Nevis, our public might have been led to the view that there were serious criminal matters afoot, and that these scoundrels in Panama had engaged in nefarious activity. Well, I don't think it should surprise many, but perhaps it will surprise some, that every single person, some 28 persons charged with the Panama Papers, have been acquitted, not guilty. All of them have been acquitted. And that, I think, is instructive, because if we had followed the media reports and made a determination just on the sensationalization that we saw in the media, one would have been led to the view that the Panama Papers disclosed massive money laundering happening in a so-called offshore center. In fact, I believe Mossack Fonseca closed down, went out of business because of the pressure associated. You heard about Vladimir Putin having some account somewhere and this person having an account elsewhere. And it was all portrayed as the worst form of criminality. But now that a court has actually looked at the matter, 28 persons charged, 28 persons acquitted. So now you know what is interesting. There are some articles now emerging where this consortium of journalists, who are the ones who so-called blew the whistle, are now saying the acquittal by a court of law is bad news for the fight against money laundering. Put differently, because a court has found these people innocent of any wrongdoing, these who are bent on a particular narrative are saying that that acquittal is bad for the fight against money laundering. Not that justice has prevailed, not that people have been afforded a day in court and have been found not guilty, but rather that the acquittal is bad. Because, you see, we must understand that there's a particular agenda. The Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers and all these massive leaks has always intrigued me, because they constituted the worst form of hacking, of accessing illegally people's information. But nobody was concerned about that. Everybody was merely concerned about what they termed the nefarious activity and political figures and others having bank accounts and trusts and assets outside their country. So if you are the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and you own a home in Switzerland, that's a crime. just because you're a public figure. Nobody's interested in how you got it, whether you work hard, whether you married a rich woman and she buy it for you. Nobody's interested in that. Just the fact that you're in public life and you have something, it's a crime. And that has been the approach of the media. And so I just want to say that because I think it's important that we understand that we ought not as St. Kitts and Nevis to be swayed unduly by what some sections of the media, that narrative that they're pushing. We must frame our own narrative and do things because it is in our national interest to do things. And so when we come and we want to amend legislation to speak to certain matters to deal with regulation, let it be because it is in our national interest to do so. Not because somebody in Europe said we must do so. Because as we understand, they may well be influenced by factors and circumstances which are not to our benefit or in our best interest. On the issue of greater openness and transparency, I'll make this final point. I did promise to be brief. I understand what the amendment is seeking to do. And as I said, I do not complain or criticize the government in trying to do what this amendment seeks to do. And my comments that I will make now will be applicable to this short bill and, I gather, the next. Because, you see, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are constantly being told that there has to be greater transparency. Let me move my chair so I could. Greater transparency. You know, transparency is a beautiful word. We hear it a lot in politics. Transparency. But I think we also have to understand that in the context of international financial services, transparency sometimes really means having your business available to whoever wants to see. And all of us in this august body, well, not you, well, yes, you, not the clerk and the deputy clerk, are political figures. And when you're a political figure, it looks like your business is more important than anybody else's business. So if you have a little bank account for your daughter or your son, and you work at TDC, or you work at a law firm, or you work at Hosfords or Rams, nobody's interested. You have a right to set aside a little money for your son or your daughter. But the minute you walk into this house here, what, he got money in the bank with his daughter? He got money for his son? Something is wrong with that. That is our people. Well, let us be real. And so a lot of this talk about transparency is people want to know your business. And I am all for transparency. I am all for accountability. But I also feel that what the Prime Minister has in his bank account, or what he has set aside for his son, or what the Honorable Attorney General has set aside for his children, for their schooling, for their health care, for all of that, that once the mechanisms that we have in place are followed, I don't know that somebody in Brownhill or somebody in Connery should just be able to go online and say, well, let me check out the AG account them, let me see what he have. He gonna ball, you say? When he see the large amount, he gonna cry? The AG say, when he say, I want it on the record. When he see the large amount, he will cry. Oh, it's small, he said. Oh, sorry. Sorry. You see, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to make that distinction. There's some people, to use a colloquial expression, who fast. But it's true. They fast. And the international community seems to be saying to us that we must have a regime where anybody could sit down in their apartment anywhere in the world, get on the computer and say, let me find out if so-and-so owns any company or so-and-so has a bank account. And so they've been pushing this agenda for some time, something that they refer to as open registers. And I just wanted to say, because the idea of an open register is exactly that anybody anywhere can log on. So let me check St. Kitts Nevis and find out who owns what. And we have to ask the question, why? Why is it relevant to somebody in Germany to know whether the AG, since I'm picking on him, has a company or has whatever? Why is it relevant? He's in public life, but even for people who are not in public life. And the UK and others have been pushing this agenda. And it's interesting, you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, because Europe, the EU adopted the standard of open registers. But a couple of companies challenge it in the EU. And they challenge it on a simple premise. Why is it that Tutmon Saman Bagai have the right to know my business? Let us remember that in the context of our country, we already have mechanisms in place to deal with exchange of information. Anytime there is a criminal investigation, I can assure the House that what would happen is some investigator from an authorized agency internationally would reach out to our Director of Public Prosecutions, our Attorney General, as the case may be. There's a high degree of cooperation that currently exists to do the very thing we say we're doing, which is to fight against illicit flows of money. But they're not satisfied with those frameworks. They're saying, listen, anybody, any busybody, anybody who fasts should be able to know everything they need to know about anybody else's business. You know, I have spoken to some people in Latin America where there's a culture, regrettably, of kidnapping, where once they find out that the good Senator Philip and her family are well endowed, I find the protest from the labor benches is very, very robust. Very robust. So when they find that out, Madam Deputy Speaker, these families become targets for kidnapping, for extortion, for things like that. So I want to say that there is a false tension that is being created in the world, where people are telling you that if you want to keep your financial business private, it means you have something to hide. It means that something is wrong. They want the world to reach to a place where I could walk into any bank and say, tell me how much money. I see my friend Sam Kanda in the gallery. Tell me how much money Sam Kanda has. Believe you'd have to go to several banks to get all the details. But tell me how much money he has. That seems to be the attitude that we're getting. So going back to this open register, the EU adopted a standard that once there was a company incorporated within the EU, even if it were a private company, and when I say private, they are public companies which are traded on stock exchanges, private company, that the details of all beneficial ownership had to be public. So Tutmun Saman Bagai would be able to check for themselves. They say this was necessary in the fight against money laundering. No. An interesting thing happened because on the 22nd of November 2022, less than 2 years ago, the European Court of Justice, in a decision on the joint cases C37/20 and C601/20, made a decision. And you know what the decision was? That the unrestricted public access to the ultimate beneficial owner registers is unlawful. Put differently, the ECJ decided that the standard that had been adopted in the EU and the UK, well, let me retract the and the UK part. The standard had been adopted in the EU and the UK. We know the UK is no longer part of the EU. And so the ECJ decision would bind the EU. But here what the EU and UK were trying to do, they were saying, once there's a company, anybody must be able to tell who owns it. And the ECJ said no, that approach was unlawful. And hear what the court went on to say. It was in breach of the fundamental right to privacy, and it is not proportionate to its stated goals, which is a fight against money laundering. They say in the immediate aftermath of that decision, a lot of countries, Luxembourg and all of them, pull their registers offline. They shut down the access right away. And I think it's instructive, because guess what's happening? The UK has certain overseas territories which are involved in financial services. Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, to name a few. And the UK was saying from Westminster that these overseas jurisdictions must, in fact, I believe the end of this year is their deadline, that they have to move to open registers. That means Tutmun, Sam and Bagai must be able to tell anybody who has a company in the BVI, by going online and checking, they'll be able to see who has what. They claim that it is a tool in the fight against money laundering. But here the European Court of Justice is saying, no, it is disproportionate. You don't need everybody to know everybody's business to fight against money laundering. Money laundering is the business of law enforcement. Money laundering is the business of the white, what you call it, the white collar crime and the investigative arms of government. This idea that I as a busybody can decide, well, I want to investigate whoever I want to investigate and find out what they have and where they have it. Criminal organizations are out there using the internet for all kinds of nefarious reasons. And if they can find out that this person has this asset here and that asset there, they become targets. And so the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, in November of 2022, less than 2 years ago, is saying that that standard is violative of the European human rights standard and the right to privacy. And I think that we are being told more and more in the world that something, privacy is bad. If you want your business private, it means that something is wrong. Nothing is wrong with privacy. What's wrong with it? If you make your living and you earn and you pay your taxes, you go to church, you pay your tithes, you do all that you do. Well, why is it that everybody must know how much money you have in the bank or whether you have a little business? And as I said, this doesn't only extend to public figures, this extends to everybody. So I come back to where I started. That we as a country and as a small country, I understand we have to navigate the world, and the world is complex and the rules are ever changing. But we have to be mindful, Madam Deputy Speaker, that when we navigate for us. That we have standards that accord with our own sentiment and ethos as a nation and as a people. Let us say, for example, that St. Kitts Nevis had looked at the big, great EU and said, oh my goodness, they've moved to open registers, we must do the same. Oh my goodness, the UK has already moved to open registers, we must do the same. Now see, the European Court of Justice is saying, no. That is against the law. That violates the people's right to privacy. And they did not just give a blanket. I just want to close the loop by saying that the European Court of Justice did not blanket say that it was against the law. They carved out some exceptions. So they said, for example, people with a legitimate interest. And that makes sense. Law enforcement, for example, has a legitimate interest. They say some journalists, although I don't know how you define journalists nowadays, because anybody with Facebook is a journalist. But they say some journalists would have legitimate interests. So it is still left to be seen how this is going to be framed. But the reason that I raise it in the context of this debate today is really to say to the House and to our people that we have to be mindful and careful that not everything that we hear countries far more powerful than us say we must run and adopt. Sometimes it's useful for us to play the long game and to watch. Because here, had we rushed to put this in place, because you know what happened? As soon as this decision was announced, the BVI them say, where we're going to hold, we're not going to go. Because they don't want to go to open registers, you know. They say, we're going to hold, we're not going to go. And old Mother England said, you have to go. Because that is now the standard in the UK. And so we are mandating that you must go. So right now there's a battle going on. I don't know if they're going to extend the deadline. But the European Court of Justice has said that it violates the right to privacy. And so that I can read into the record, if I can find it, it said that the unrestricted public access to the ultimate beneficial owner register is unlawful insofar as it is a breach of the fundamental right to privacy and is not proportionate to its stated goal, which is the fight against money laundering. I say all that to say we have to be careful. We have to ensure that our steps in relation to regulation are deliberate, and we have to ensure that they're done with the best advice of our technocrats, and that ultimately we are trying to serve the interests of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are putting things in place that marry with, that support, and that promote our own sense of who we are and where we are in this world as a small nation. Lest there be any misconstruing of my brief intervention, I want to say I support the bill that is under consideration. May it please you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Nevis 9. Any other presentations? I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 8 to do his wrap-up.
Madam Speaker, I rise to wrap the debate up on this bill shortly entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, a lot of the points that were made by the member from number 9 are critical and important points. To extend a bit from the FATF, we must also recognize that within the same European Union, they also publish what they consider to be the best standards when it comes to laws against money laundering and terrorist funding, even beyond what the FATF recommends. So sometimes you can have a country that might be in full compliance with FATF, yet they can end up on a gray list or blacklist accordingly if they are not in compliance with what is considered from the European Union to be the gold standard. I say all of that to say that it's a difficult world out there for nations like ours to navigate, because even though we might hold the position that we think is best for us, because of our smaller voice and the fact that we may not have as much influence as a larger nation, sometimes we are affected negatively by implementing certain things, but it could be worse if we were to end up on a gray or blacklist. And so really, we are seeking to find the right balance. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, is that based on our own values, we do not want to become what you call a progressive jurisdiction. What does that mean? For example, if we were to recall the stem cell research that was taking place here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the investigators came to our jurisdiction because they felt we did not have in law what would be considered safeguards against the misuse and the misapplication of stem cell, as those laws would prohibit in the United States and what they call the industrialized countries, Madam Speaker. So at the same time, and the point was made, we have to make sure that we keep our standards as well. And so persons would not think that what they cannot get away with in another jurisdiction, that they can get away with in our jurisdiction. So it is a tightrope to walk, Madam Speaker. And the smaller you are, the less influential you are, the tighter the rope. And so the points are taken from member from number 9. And so this is a debate that continues and will continue, and we will continue to walk those tightropes, Madam Speaker, for our benefit. But again, it is extremely, extremely challenging. And so, Madam Speaker, with that, may it please you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8. The question is that the bill entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024 be read a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Limited Partnerships Act, CAP 20.59, otherwise known as the Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage. Proceed.
Clauses 1 through 7.
The question is that clauses 1 through 7 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the bill, shortly entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024, has passed through committee stage without amendments. And I further move, Madam Speaker, that this bill be read a third time and pass into law.
Seconder. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3.
I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the bill entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Limited Partnerships Act, CAP 20.59, otherwise known as the Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a third time and passed into law. Next bill.
I rise, Madam Speaker, to lead the debate of and have read for a second time in this honorable House the bill shortly entitled Foundations Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker. Deputy Speaker, rather. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Foundations Act does not adequately provide for the sufficiency of information required by the methodology, nor are there sufficient dissuasive sanctions in the Act, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we are bringing this amendment forward. The first amendment to Section 10 provides that when foundations change their name, the councillors or secretary must now notify the registrar within 21 days, and the registrar is to make the necessary changes to the register. The second amendment to Section 18 increases the penalty for refusing to allow inspections to increase the penalty from EC $2,500 to EC $10,000 and to EC $200 for each day of non-compliance, Madam Speaker. This is also an added section which creates a fine for failing to keep an internal register. Madam Speaker, the third amendment to Section 63 specifies that foundation bylaws can be amended or replaced, but notice must be given to the registrar within 21 days, Madam Speaker. The fourth amendment to Section 66 increases the penalty for failure to produce annual returns. Madam Speaker, the fifth amendment to Section 68 increases the penalty for failure to keep records as required by the Act. And lastly, the last amendment, Madam Speaker, to Section 75 increases the fines for general offenses to the Act. So, Madam Speaker, if you were to look at these amendments that are being made, we are really tightening up on how foundations to some extent function. They have to, of course, give notice. They have to function in a way that within their normal flow of business, that it can be certain that the foundation is functioning for what it was created for, Madam Speaker, and that it is not being used for anything outside of that purpose. This is critically important, Madam Speaker. Again, what we don't want to have here is that someone forms a foundation merely to have it as another function, contrary to what is stated as its function, Madam Speaker. And then after having a foundation formed, that persons can then go and manipulate it to some extent in order to carry out a particular business or function that was not registered or was not intended for initially, Madam Speaker. So again, this comes in the spirit, as in the first bill, that we are tightening up to make sure that our jurisdiction, again, is not being misused and abused for those who have nefarious ends, Madam Speaker. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8. Seconder. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1.
Motion and reserve that right to speak.
Any presentations? I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8 to do his wrap-up.
Madam Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, with your leave once again, I rise to report that the bill shortly entitled Foundation Amendment Bill 2024. Right, Madam Speaker. I rise to wrap up the debate, Madam Speaker, and to say that, again, there isn't much to say on this. This is a fairly straightforward bill, non-controversial, and, Madam Speaker, may it please you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8. The question is that the bill entitled Foundations Amendment Bill 2024 be read a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Foundation Act, Cap 5.19, otherwise known as the Foundations Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Foundations Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage. Proceed.
Clauses 1 through 9.
The question is that clauses 1 through 9 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 8.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report the bill shortly entitled Foundation Amendment Bill 2024 has passed through committee stage without amendment. Madam Speaker, I further move that this bill be read a third time and pass into law. May it please you, Madam.
The question is that the bill entitled... Seconder, please. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1.
I second that motion, Honorable Deputy.
Thank you. The question is that the bill entitled Foundations Amendment Bill 2024 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Foundations Act, Cap 5.19, otherwise known as the Foundations Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Foundation Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a third time and passed into law. Next bill. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker. I rise to have read a second time and to lead the debate of a bill shortly titled the Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, in the spirit of the bills that have passed today, this is also a very simple amendment to the Ombudsman Act, Cap 3.22 of the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. And the amendment seeks to do two simple things: revise the remuneration of the ombudsman, as well as the tenure of the ombudsman. The Ombudsman Act came into operation in July 2008 to provide for the appointment and functions of the ombudsman and related matters. The functions of the ombudsman are: 1, to investigate any administrative action of an authority for the purpose of deciding whether there is evidence of maladministration on the part of the authority, and 2, to make recommendations pursuant to an investigation to the authority concerning any administrative action that form the subject of the investigation, and generally about ways of improving its administrative practices and procedures. It is therefore a very important part of the good governance infrastructure of a nation. Section 5.1 of the Ombudsman Act provides that the ombudsman may hold office until he or she attains the age of 72. However, 70 years, my apologies, 70 years. However, pursuant to the Integrity in Public Life Act, a member of the Integrity Commission is appointed by instrument in writing and shall hold office for a period not exceeding 5 years and shall be eligible for reappointment. Section 8.1 of the Act provides that the Ombudsman shall receive emoluments not less than payable to a High Court judge. High Court judges make approximately between $18,000 and $23,000 EC dollars per month. Now, the reason for the bill, Madam Speaker, even though very simple, is to make the good governance infrastructure of our country sustainable in the long term. When the Ombudsman Act was passed in 2008, there were no other good governance offices in the jurisdiction. It was the Ombudsman alone that was the good governance office that had a check on the government. But now, Madam Speaker, we have the Integrity Commission. We have the Information Commissioner under the Freedom of Information Act. We have the Special Prosecutor under the Anti-Corruption Act. So there now is a good governance, anti-corruption infrastructure in the country, not just a standalone ombudsman. So what we have sought to do with this amendment is to allow the Ombudsman office to also serve as the Information Commissioner office, because there are certain overlaps with what is done by the Information Commissioner, who is effectively in charge of the freedom of information structure in the country, and the Ombudsman, who is in charge of receiving complaints about maladministration. So when we examined it as a whole, we felt that it was important to regularize and also to preserve the amount that is expended in relation to this large, much larger good governance infrastructure that is in place now, that is different than what it was in 2008. So what we are proposing with the amendment is that the Ombudsman is compensated equivalent to that of a permanent secretary. And actually, in the estimates, the post of Ombudsman within the ministry is actually a K45 post, which is that of a permanent secretary. So the amendment first seeks to make the compensation of the Ombudsman equivalent to that role of permanent secretary, which of course is one of the most senior roles in the government. And also they will be entitled to the emoluments and all of the rights that a permanent secretary has, Madam Speaker. Further, the role of the Ombudsman is not necessarily a role similar to that of a High Court judge, because now there are other checks and balances by way of the Integrity Commission and the Information Commissioner and so forth and so on. So what we felt was that the tenure as well should match with that of the Integrity Commission and all of those other good governance infrastructures. So the proposed amendment reduces the level of the Ombudsman's remuneration to that to be equivalent of a permanent secretary, in keeping with the budgetary allotment for that post. And also it gives the Ombudsman the entitlement of pension and gratuity of that of a permanent secretary. And the Ombudsman tenure is now aligned with the chairperson of the Integrity Commission, which we felt was more in keeping with what was the goal of the overall good governance infrastructure, because the Ombudsman serves a similar role to that of the Integrity Commissioner. So, Madam Speaker, the bill, as I said, extremely simple. It amends two sections of the Act, Section 5 and Section 8, and it really does those two simple things. And we believe that there's a reasonable justification, particularly having sat down with the Ombudsman and asked, what are your daily activities? This was not something done in a high office without consultation and reflection on the realities of the actual office. So we sat with the Ombudsman and said, what do you do on a daily basis? What is your workload like? Do you believe that this is a role that should also share the Information Commissioner role? And having sat down with the acting Ombudsman, we felt that it was appropriate that that office can deal with those two fundamental aspects which have a lot of overlap in the good governance infrastructure of the country. So we felt that the remuneration of a permanent secretary, the benefits would be sufficient given the role and responsibility of that individual, less so than the role and responsibility of a High Court judge, which was done in a time when the Ombudsman was the beginning and the end of good governance. Now we have so many elements of good governance in our government. We want to rationalize it so that it is affordable as well. Because you want a strong good governance regime, but you also want it to be sustainable so that it's not a weight on the treasury of the country and the people of the country ultimately. So those are the two simple amendments that have been discussed with the acting ombudsman and the ombudsman of the past, and we felt that it was a necessary change to make the good governance infrastructure, the information commissioner, and the ombudsman office more sustainable, Madam Speaker. And that was the justification, and that is why this very simple bill is before this House. And I welcome the views of other members of the House on the bill. With that said, I'll take my seat, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
I'd like to second the motion with your leave, Madam Speaker, and reserve my right to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Honorable. Any other presentations? I recognize the Honorable Attorney General to give his wrap-up.
Madam Speaker, I have nothing else to add. As I said, it's a very simple bill with 2 amendment sections, and I believe that silence is consent, and everybody sees that it is a reasonable recommendation. And I realize that the acting ombudsman who is in the gallery is not upset, and he seems to be quite happy as someone who is in the trenches, and he knows that the obligations and the responsibilities, we've outfitted him with a new office space so he can have his own space and his whatever administrative support that he needs to do his job. And I think that is important. And Madam Speaker, I must say this because our people need to understand. Imagine we who are responsible to the people in this honorable House for presenting laws and debating them are reducing the potential salary of someone. You would think that the person whose salary could potentially be reduced would be upset. But when there is reason for things that are done, there is no upset. And I think it's very important for our people to know. There should be reasonable compensation for what is done. 2024 is a different time to 2008. The member for number 3 can do the maths as to how long that is. That is, I believe, 16 years ago? More than that. Yeah, 16 years ago. It was a different time. Now, we have all of the good governance infrastructures in place. The Integrity Commission to review the declarations of public servants. You have the Freedom of Information Act, which allows the Information Commissioner to control, to advise on the access to government information for transparency and accountability. You have the Special Prosecutor and the Anti-Corruption Act. You have the Unauthorized Disclosure of Official Information Act. You have the Whistleblower Protection Act, which allows anybody to go to one of the offices and to make reports if they see any bad activities. So now that we're in a modern St. Kitts and Nevis, it's important for us to rationalize our laws so that no weights that occurred 16 years ago can hold us back from accomplishing the goal that we want to accomplish, which is to have a transparent and accountable government with important offices that keep the checks and balances in place so that we can all go about our business of making the lives of our people better. Yes, and yes, that's a good point. The actual remuneration of a High Court judge was never paid to the former ombudsman and the acting ombudsman because it was always budgeted by the National Assembly as a permanent secretary position. So I think that's important to note, Madam Speaker. And with those few words, I'll take my seat and I wish the bill safe passage.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. The question is that the bill entitled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Ombudsman Act, Cap 3.22, otherwise known as the Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage. Proceed.
Clauses 1 through 4.
The question is that clauses 1 through 4 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the bill shortly titled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 has successfully passed through the committee stage without amendments, and I move that the bill shortly titled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 be read a third time and passed.
Seconder, I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
I rise to second that motion.
Thank you, Honorable. The question is that the bill entitled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Ombudsman Act, Cap 3.22, otherwise known as the Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Ombudsman Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a third time and passed into law. Next bill. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
May it please you again, Madam Speaker. I rise to have read for a second time and to lead the debate of a bill shortly titled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, this bill is also an amendment that is very simple, and what it seeks to do is to allow either the Ombudsman or the Special Prosecutor to serve as the Information Commissioner. And I just wish to give you a little background to understand why we are moving this bill today. In 2018, the Freedom of Information Act was passed in Parliament, but it was never operationalized until last year, Madam Speaker, when an amendment was passed in this House in February, and the full operationalization occurred in November. The Act provides a mechanism by which members of the public, particularly press, can gain access to non-confidential government information. There are various types of information that cannot be disclosed, including information related to commercial interests, national security, law enforcement, and legal professional privilege, etc. An Information Commissioner is to be engaged to supervise the process, receive complaints from persons who feel aggrieved, investigate complaints, create policies, and lay reports to the National Assembly. The Act itself provides that the Information Commissioner shall hold office for a term of 3 years and may be appointed to serve a maximum of 2 terms. The Act also provides that a person in public office cannot act as an Information Commissioner. The intention of the ministry is for the Ombudsman to also serve as the Information Commissioner, because both posts have overlapping responsibilities. And for budgetary reasons, given the workload of both offices, it can be managed by one public officer. So, Madam Speaker, very, very, very simple bill. What it does, it seeks to allow the Ombudsman or Special Prosecutor to qualify there for appointment as the Information Commissioner. The intention is, with safe passage, that the current acting Ombudsman will become the Ombudsman/Information Commissioner. So any aggrieved persons can show up to one office and they can get their answers, or they can launch their investigations through the office of one individual who is capable of managing both. And I will let the people know, if it becomes a point where the workload is too much for one person, we can always, without coming back into the House, split the roles and engage someone else independently to serve as Information Commissioner and Ombudsman. So this is not a set-in-stone move. This is we're in the embryonic phases of these roles being maximized, and we're going to see how it works. And this gives us the flexibility to allow for what we think at the moment is a process and a service that can be done by one individual serving two roles as Ombudsman and Information Commissioner. And also Special Prosecutor as well. And we also, the other amendment is so that the tenure of the Information Commissioner is aligned with that of the Ombudsman and members of the Integrity Commission. That is a period not exceeding 5 years, and that person is eligible for reappointment. So by aligning the terms, we then allow a person to serve as the Ombudsman and Information Commissioner, and all of the various offices in the good governance infrastructure are now aligned. And it is a very good reason, Madam Speaker, it's a very simple bill. And with that, I will take my seat.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. May I have a seconder, please? I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 6.
Madam Speaker, permit me please, as I rise, to second the bill, the motion of the bill that has been just read and debated to some extent by the Attorney General, the Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024. And please allow me to reserve my right to speak if necessary.
Any other presentations? I recognize the Honorable Member for Nevis 10.
Good morning, Madam Deputy Speaker. Just a brief intervention, and just to say that I'm supportive of the amendments here. Of course, we have to recognize that we are in a very small jurisdiction, and sometimes one office can actually hold duplicate positions. And so with the Ombudsman, with the integrity that that person would normally hold, of course you have to be of a certain repute to be able to hold the position of Ombudsman. And so I don't see any reason why the Ombudsman cannot hold other duties in terms of being the Information Commissioner. And so I would support this amendment, Madam Deputy Speaker. May it please you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Nevis 10. And I recognize the Honorable Senator Joy Clark.
Good day, Madam Speaker. I also want to rise to lend my support very briefly to this bill and to this amendment, recognizing that as we pursue our good governance agenda, we're making information readily available, and we believe that the role of the Ombudsman and the Information Officer can serve as it is, and as Attorney General has outlined, nothing is set in stone. Parliament and legislation can be flexible and adapt to changing needs, so I lend this my full support and wish it success to the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Senator Clark. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 4.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With your leave, I also rise to lend my support to this bill. You know, as we try to effectively update our laws and our legislation, we recognize that it is prudent that we come to this honorable House and do the work of the public. And today, with this bill, we recognize that we are trying to be more efficient with the use of our resources, our people, and our space. And this bill, I think, helps to do just that. With the work of the Ombudsman, you know, coupling the positions, I think, in the same space and with the same human resource is also critical for the efficiency of government with a scarce resource. And a country as small as ours, we have to maximize our talent and our potential. And so what we propose here today, Madam Speaker, is, I think, well in line with a positive way forward for St. Kitts and Nevis. And I do lend my voice and my support to that. Thank you. With your leave.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Christopher 4. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1.
Madam Speaker, I too rise to lend my support to this bill before the Honorable House and to personally again express our sincere thank you to our Honorable Attorney General for the hard work that he and his entire team is doing. And when I listened this morning, I recognize the person who would be carrying out the task. I personally can speak about the competence. In fact, we grew up in the youth movement, and then we further went into, no, we were youth together. And we were very actively involved as well in the community of Kayon, in our youth group while we attended the Kayon Church of God over there. So this morning, as we try to tidy up our legislations, I am very pleased to lend my support to this unique combination. I think it might be one of the first in our time, in our 2 years here, short of that we would have bought something like this. I want to lend my full support to it, and again, congratulate the Attorney General and his entire team. May it please.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General to give his wrap-up.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise to wrap up the debate on this bill, the Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024. And I just have one thing to say. Life is very much about balance. And on this side, it's important for us to ensure that there's transparency, accountability, and good governance in our society, but also to respect the people's purse. And this bill is a balance of ensuring that there's effective good governance infrastructure whilst preserving the people's purse, Madam Speaker. And I think it's important for us to always keep clarity, as was said, clarity of mind, as was said in the prayer when we started today, as well as balance in everything that we do. So with that said, Madam Speaker, I wish the bill safe passage.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. The question is that the bill entitled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Freedom of Information Act, number 6 of 2018, also known as the Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage. Proceed.
Clauses 1 through 4.
The question is that clauses 1 through 4 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I rise to inform that the bill shortly titled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024 has safely passed through committee stage without amendment, and I pray that it be read for a third time and passed.
Seconder. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1.
I rise to second that, Deputy.
Thank you. The question is that the bill entitled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Freedom of Information Act, number 6 of 2018, otherwise known as the Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill entitled Freedom of Information Amendment Bill 2024 has been read a third time and passed into law. Next item on the order paper.
Motions, resolutions, adjournment.
I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1.
Madam Speaker, I rise at this time on the adjournment very briefly to express congratulations to all of our students who are graduating at this time at all levels. I have had the time, Madam Deputy, to be running 2 and 3 graduations per day, and it's really an exciting time for parents and likewise the students who are graduating. And I want to express sincere thanks as well to all of the teachers and educators who would have prepared our children for this time of their journey. And more so those who are leaving high school into tertiary education, those who might be going into the workforce. I want to wish you the very best and to encourage you never to give up on your education dreams. It doesn't matter how late it is, once you have that determination to achieve it, you would be able to achieve it. So I wanted to use this opportunity to congratulate all of those who are graduating and even those who are going off to university who are successful in receiving scholarships. I want to congratulate each and every one of you, and I wish you God's continued guidance as you pursue your academic dreams. May it please you, Madam Deputy.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1. I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your leave, I wanted to make a contribution on the adjournment. Firstly, we want to extend our prayers, sympathies, well wishes to our neighboring islands in the Caribbean on the passing of Hurricane Beryl that has left a trail of destruction. This is an important time to observe that never in the history of the world, much less the Caribbean, that shares the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic, that we have had a Category 5 hurricane in the very first part of July of any year. This is unprecedented. It is unheard of. We have never seen it before. This brings to bear the reality that our climate is changing, that there is something that has caused the increased temperatures in our oceans, the increased temperatures that we experience, and the culmination of all of these climatic changes that make a very fertile ground for disastrous storms to come our way. And so we extend, as I said, our well wishes and our tremendous support to all of our neighborhood islands, including Grenada, Carriacou, Union Island, SVG, Jamaica, Cayman Islands also, and it is now heading to the Central American countries. St. Kitts and Nevis is here to always extend a helping hand however we can. I know that we have already done so, and we will continue to do so as much as we can, because we know that our brothers and sisters would be there for us in our time of need. And none of us are spared from the ravages of what this new norm brings for us. And the funny thing about it is we were at an event yesterday with respect to launching the decarbonization of St. Kitts and Nevis with some grant funding from the GEF facility. And someone said there that this is our new norm. But then I reflected that this actually might not be the norm. It might get worse. It's not just going to stay this way. And if we do not act, and if our big neighbor brothers who contribute over 80% of the greenhouse gases to our environment do not act, it is quite possible that in a shorter space of time, it will just not be feasible anymore to inhabit our small islands. And so it is urgent and it is life-threatening. And we will do all that we can on the international front, at home, in the region, to plead our case that there is need for climate justice. There is need for those who have been responsible to take a greater look at ensuring that, one, we stop the increase in our global temperature, but also do what is necessary to make sure that we are resilient. An important fact to note is that these events, when they hit our small economies, mean that we have to spend 20, 30, 40% of our GDP or of our expenditure just to recover. So coming out of an event like COVID, to now have to deal with the onset of these very vicious storms, it will always be something that will hold our progress back. By contrast, the United States and North America, when they experience these types of events, they are only affected by about 1%. That's the amount that they have to spend extra based on their expenditure. In Asia and in Europe, it's maybe less than 1%. And so it is not the case where it is urgent on their part because it is not affecting their pockets as it would ours. But we will continue to make that case, and we extend our heart and our well wishes and our support to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. On a sad note, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to extend condolences and sympathies to the family and friends of Mr. Dexter Tyrrell. Dexter Tyrrell was a longtime colleague of mine and constituency number 3, and it is painful even now for me to be mentioning this. We will have a vigil for Dexter on Monday at the Patsy Allers Playfield, and his farewell ceremony will be on Wednesday at the Antioch Baptist Church. Dexter was an extraordinary human being. He was genuine and a good person. He was a good man. And sometimes I look around and I say, life is simply just not fair. Where you have a gentleman like this who gave his life to his community, to sports, to football, to supporting and uplifting, always positive. Nobody has anything bad to say about him. He doesn't get to live, a full life. He's not here today. He's gone in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, in the same life that we live, there are those who spew hatred, who only want to tear down people, who only want to malign people's name, who only want to play politics day in and day out. They live today. But that is life. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to extend my most heartfelt and profound sympathies to those who were close to His Excellency Dexter Tyrrell. He will be dearly missed. I'm still unable to process this completely. It is still affecting me, I must admit. I have not felt like this for a very, very, very long time. And, I trust that God will show us the way, not just myself, but obviously his family and his close friends, on how we will deal with this very traumatic loss and surprising loss. On a brighter note, I just want to extend congratulations to Minister Marsha Henderson on the successful music festival for 2024. By all reviews, it seems to have been a raving success. I was able to witness it myself as well, and it seems as though it continues to go bigger and better each year. It is clear that the organization of the festival was very good, and so congratulations is extended to the entire team that is associated with hosting of the music festival. And we welcome the world back again for Music Festival in 2025, as once this trend continues, that will be yet another higher step, another step up in the production of what is one of the, if not the oldest, Caribbean music festivals in this part of the region. Congratulations again to everyone, and congratulations to all the patrons who continue to support this event over the years, and let's keep it going. With those words, Madam Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, may it please you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3. I recognize the Honourable Member for Nevis 10.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise on the adjournment to make a few remarks as well. I would also like to join in extending empathy and sympathy to our neighbors, our Caribbean neighbors, on that monster, real monster storm Beryl that would have done so much damage and would have actually caused some deaths. I think the last count I heard this morning was 11. And so we want to show solidarity with our neighbors, especially in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in Grenada, in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands. And we really have to be aware of what is happening around us, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as I show solidarity and I give empathy and sympathy, we must remind our nationals and residents here in St. Kitts and Nevis of how important it is to prepare. We have heard how devastating this season could be. We are still hoping that the predictions are wrong, but based on what we would have seen from Beryl, it almost seems like they might be correct. We are still hoping that something, the good Lord could intervene. But we must remind persons living in St. Kitts and Nevis that this is no time to play, and we must be ready as possible where disasters are concerned. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate two nationals of St. Kitts for making the West Indies team. The Louis brothers, Michael and Jeremiah, I have the names correct? I'm very happy and proud that two persons from St. Kitts, and those St. Kitts have been knocking on the door of West Indies for a very long time, and at last the door has been opened. Yes, I am very, very happy. As a former sports minister from Nevis, I'm very happy that these two gentlemen from St. Kitts have actually made it to the West Indies team. I believe that they will make a solid contribution. I believe that they are two outstanding players, and we are happy that the Federation has once again put two persons on the West Indies team. I want to wish them every success in the current tour in England, and I hope that they will cement their teams on the West Indies team, and that this will be the first of many tours for them throughout the world. And so congratulations to the Louis brothers, congratulations to St. Kitts, congratulations to the Federation for doing it again for the West Indies. I also want to extend congratulations to the member who is responsible for tourism and who is responsible for the St. Kitts Music Festival. I think it was another very successful festival that was hosted here. I was here for 2 of the nights and I had a good time. I enjoyed the music festival. And overall, I've heard some good comments and good feedback. So congratulations for another successful hosting of the St. Kitts Music Festival. And as I talk about festivals, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all to the Mango Festival in Nevis. It's being hosted this weekend. We would have started last evening, and we are having activities today and tomorrow, and on Sunday we climax. As a matter of fact, I'm happy that we are finishing early today, because we have an event today that will be done in collaboration with my ministry, the Department of Agriculture, and so I'll be able to get a little taste of that. But the main event is on Sunday, so I'm hoping to see all. I know last year I was overseas and I got a call from Madam Senator. There were some issues last year, but those issues will be ironed out this year. We assure persons that all of the issues that were there last year will be sorted out. This is the 10th anniversary of the Mango Festival, and I know we are all a mango-loving public here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and so I'm expecting to see all of you over there, especially on Sunday, for the climaxing and the main event. And because it is the 10th anniversary, apart from you get to taste so many dishes with mangoes, there is also a mango concert. I don't know if that's the name of it, but there's a concert featuring about 6 of our local bands. And so the tasting event and the eating event goes from 1 until about 5, and then from about 5 we have the concert that features strictly local talent. And so I believe that Sunday will be an exceptional day, and Sunday will be an epic day for the Mango Festival, being the 10th, as we celebrate the 10th anniversary. So I'm encouraging all to come over and support and celebrate with us for the love of mangoes for this 10th anniversary. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I know a lot of persons in the Federation have been mourning the loss of loved ones these days. I want to sympathize and extend heartfelt condolences to all who have been mourning the loss of loved ones here in St. Kitts and in Nevis as well. We have a lot of persons on Nevis who are in the bereaved column, but I want to especially pay homage and sympathize with my brother and my colleague in the Nevis Island Administration, the Honorable Spencer Brand. He and his family, they are going through a very, very rough period right now. He would have lost his 3-year-old granddaughter, and it is a really, really sad occasion for he and his family. So I want to extend heartfelt condolences to himself, Honorable Spencer, and Sheila, his wife, to his children, Chevron and Chevronette, and of course especially to Stedroy and Aquila, the parents of the 3-year-old Symphony. As I said, I know it's a very, very, very rough time for them. So just want to let Spencer and his family know that we are here for them, and you know, the prayers continue to go up for them, and to them and all who are mourning the loss of loved ones. Heartfelt condolences to you. May it please you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Nevis 10. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would want to join in extending congratulations to the entities that have been before me, referred to, but in particular to commend all the parents and their students who have been graduating so far and at all levels of the education system, from preschoolers all the way up to primary, secondary, and at tertiary level. This is a moment of great rejoicing for parents to see their loved ones, their children, as it were, elevate themselves from one level onto another. As a former Minister of Education for several years, I had the distinct pleasure of being deeply involved in all these occasions of festivities within the education sector, both at home and abroad. And so heartfelt congratulations to everyone at this important moment. I also want to join in extending again to this particular medium congratulations to the Louis brothers for making history and indeed history and 2 occasions, 2 brothers, 1 family, for their outstanding achievement. I have had the occasion to have met them, met their families, sat and had conversations with them about their own involvement in cricket in particular, how they persevered against significant odds. And the occasion of Mikhail's own success and nomination as part of the touring party, I met with him, his mother, his father, and other well-wishers, including Jacqueline, Bryant, and so on, who had accompanied me to meet and to share with them our own joy at their particular historic moment. And I had the occasion later to basically engage with the second brother, Jeremiah, who basically has done well. And incidentally, when we first met, there was a conversation that was taking place about his own track record and how he had been omitted several times. And the questions were raised about what role does the local associations play in agitation, and what role could a broader community, because when you looked at the outstanding track record of Jeremiah as a bowler, he should have long been where he now is. And we hope that this entry that he has had, albeit belatedly, would in fact be cemented by his continuing superb performance. So congratulations again. We wish them well. And one would hope, though, that in determining the kind of benefits that we would as a nation provide to those who succeed, that they be the subject of greater national involvement and participation in determining the kind of support to be provided. We have inputs from the various associations, various entities, and the larger society, so that we could all know in advance and people can look forward to something independently determined for which they can achieve should they reach the zenith or the pinnacle. I think that would be an important part of the nation building process. Our brothers and sisters in the OECS, in particular St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and the islands associated therewith, Jamaica even further afield as part of the CARICOM member states, and even those now in the Americas that are faced with the fury and danger of what is left of Hurricane Beryl. Our hearts and our minds are with them. And we certainly would hope for a speedy recovery. We mourn with those who have been left dead by the savagery of this storm, and we pray that the God of mercies would in fact attenuate and lessen the impact of any further storm that would come our way. I want to join in extending sympathies to Dexter Tyrrell's family and his own loss. And he's somebody that I've known for quite a while. We shared workplace at one point in history. He lived for a while in my own constituency, etc. So he's someone with whom I've had a very amicable relationship for a very long time. And so I extend heartfelt condolences. Sometimes when people die, we ask why. But death is part of the process of living. Those who live will eventually die. And so it is all in the hands of the Lord in a manner of speaking. And it is to whom we must look for a greater understanding of the why. In fact, one popular songs that we would sing at funeral service, say, further along, we will understand it. Further along, we would understand why. As I speak of death, I want to fondly recall the excellent personality that was Eulene Jeffers, who served for an extended period as a crossing guard at the Keon High School, had a loving relationship with that school, with the students, and with the teaching staff. Her demise was shocking, and my prayers are with the family, the community of Molyneux, and in fact the entire constituency. She was a vibrant member of the People's Labour Party. I want to thank the family for the support they had given her, the time and respect for her political choices to allow her to have given the party such strong support. She served not just at the Keon High School, but she was transferred quite recently to the Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary School that is temporarily being housed at the Explorers Club in Phillips. And we hope perhaps that that temporary situation would shortly be ended, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, we could have done many things, but if that is the answer, it is not an answer that could take us forward. So, member, a better response basically would be there. That
Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1, please allow the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7 to finish.
That school, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, was in fact initiated after a dangerous fire took place, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we had determined that that school would have been reconstructed under emergency procurement, given what had happened, the unexpected nature and the consequences of any prolonged displacement of the students and the staff of the Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary School. It is unfortunate that now 2 years, the situation is still as it was. And it doesn't matter that it could have been done. It never could have been built in that time. That we were there, having to regard that the fire took place on around April or May thereabout, Madam Speaker. And so within 2 years, it could have been done, and decisions were made for it to be done, just for the completeness of the record, since the member for number 1 took me there. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, we are hoping, and I am aware of several communications from the PTA of the Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary School and the Ministry of Education. And so maybe the Minister of Education at an appropriate time could perhaps get up to speed in relation to those particular exchanges. What I can say that there is a great deal of dissatisfaction in the manner in which this particular engagement is being handled. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me that opportunity. Say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I left a particular funeral service to come here that was with respect to a fellow citizen from Keon. She is a Percival from Keon, and she had, well, for the last 7+ years, had gone missing, and eventually a decision was taken after consultation with the police, etc., that it would be appropriate for a memorial service to be had in her memory. And I do hope that the service that was held today would allow the family and the community of loved ones an opportunity to bring some closure. The body has still not yet been found, but it is over 7 years. And I think having been there, witnessed it, knowing the Percival family, their close-knitted connection, not only as a family unit, but as a community, my heart and prayers will remain with them. Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 5.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise under the adjournment to make a few brief statements. Firstly, Madam Speaker, let me also join in congratulating all of our students who are graduating. We have had students at the various levels who have successfully pursued their education, and they are now able to celebrate. I must also say congratulations to the parents, the teachers, and all of those who have been involved in ensuring that those students have been able to complete their various levels of education to date and to be able to graduate. Allow me, however, Madam Deputy Speaker, to single out one particular individual, and that individual is Xavier Gums, who recently graduated in Taiwan. I single him out, Madam Deputy Speaker, not only because he is from my own constituency, but he's a police officer on leave who would have worked with me performing security duties during my tenure as a Minister of Government. I recall that initially when he had applied to go to Taiwan, he wasn't successful. But that did not deter him from wanting to pursue his education. And so he subsequently reapplied, was successful, and has graduated with many awards. It says to our own people, and in particular those who are now graduating, that even though you may not be successful on the first occasion in terms of getting into a particular university, etc., that there is still hope, and that one ought not to give up, but instead to continue to pursue your dream of getting an education. The second thing that I would want to do is also to extend congratulations to the Louis brothers for making it to the West Indies cricket team. I wish both of them well. I wish them a long and successful tenure with the West Indies cricket team. They have finally opened the door for petitions, and noting that two have been able to make it at one time, I do hope that it doesn't necessarily come to a situation where we don't see any other petitions for a long time, but we will have other petitions who will be able also to make it to the West Indies team, and to indeed show the rest of the Caribbean and the world that St. Kitts, like any other country here in the Caribbean, can produce good cricketers. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, I extend condolences to a number of families that are currently mourning. There are 3 recent ones within my own constituency. The Gilbert family from the Gut area. Just yesterday you had a gentleman who we referred to as Madam Lal. He's one of the Borgans from the Downing Street area. And thirdly, to a lady Hendrickson from the Cleverly Hill area. As the families continue to mourn, I want to say to them that I do hope that they find comfort in God and comfort in the legacy that their loved ones would have left. It would be remiss of me, however, not to also extend condolences to the family of Dexter Tyrrell. Dexter is someone who I was able to meet, always a pleasant individual. And when I was Minister of Education in particular, I would have met the mother of his son, and she and I, over the years, have developed quite a good relationship, and so I want to extend personal condolences to her in this, the Parliament. Yulin Jeffers, who would have been mentioned by the member for number 7, is a lady who I encountered while I served as Minister of Education, as she worked as the security officer at the Kayan High School. She was one who, in my estimation, had the interests of the school and the children at heart. The security officers, they serve a very useful purpose at all of our educational institutions, provided they are doing their jobs. And so she was able quite often to report as to what the students are doing, etc. I've said to persons that as a minister, you're often in an office, but it is the persons who are out there in the institutions who really and truly know what is going on a daily basis within the institutions and are able to give you pertinent information that enable you to develop policies, etc. Finally, I want to also extend condolences to those who have died as a result of Hurricane Beryl, and to empathize with all of the different countries, islands which have been affected as a result of Hurricane Beryl. I do hope that they're able to recover as quickly as possible. When you listen to some of the news report, you recognize that it's going to take several years for some of these islands in particular to, I wouldn't even say fully recover, because basically, because of the damage, those islands are going to find themselves in a situation whereby, in terms of their development, you are pushed back, and so you're trying to catch up and to move forward thereafter. I want to say to our own people that I do hope that what we have seen within the other islands would, in the first instance, cause us to become compassionate in terms of offering whatever assistance we can to those persons. Sometimes we feel that it is just the government that has that responsibility to lend a helping hand. But if we are to unite as a people and assist in whatever way we can, whether it is in terms of foodstuff, building materials, etc., it would go a very long way in terms of helping those persons to recover. The second thing that I want to say to our people relative to Hurricane Beryl is that when you look at some of the stories pertaining to some of the persons who would have lost life, one would consider it to be quite careless. And so I would want to say to our own people that to use what you have seen as an example as to what not to do and how to properly, as best as possible, prepare yourself for these types of disasters. Today, it is others. The season has just started. We pray that, of course, we will not be hit, but we never know when it will be our turn. I recall that when I was Minister of Education, one of the things that we had done in terms of offering assistance to some of the other islands is that we opened up our education system to facilitate students from the other islands who had been displaced because the schools were damaged. Today, I look around within the society and I see some of the very same persons who migrated to St. Kitts as students because they had been affected is still living here and still making quite a valuable contribution to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. I say that because I know that sometimes as a society, we become fearful of others coming in. But we have to be our brother's keeper. And we don't know what is going to happen for the rest of the season, whether it is going to be us or it is going to be others. And so in whatever way we can open our institutions, our homes, our pocketbooks, etc., to assist those who have been affected, I would encourage us to do so. May it so please you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 5. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 4.
Madam Speaker, I rise on matter of adjournment to join in with my colleagues in giving my sympathies to those affected by Hurricane Beryl across the region. We've seen the trail of destruction from the islands down south, partly St. Vincent and the islands of the Grenadines and Grenada, and we've heard about the destruction further north with Jamaica and in part Haiti as well. Madam Speaker, it's always a sad moment when we have to face the hurricane season, knowing how much peril it brings having storms flow through our islands and how vulnerable we are, and especially with the heightened impact due to climate change. But I believe we are indeed resilient and strong people, and I do trust that we will support each other through it all. But I also want to give my condolences as well, Madam Speaker, for the family of Dexter Turrell. As the Minister of Sports, he worked within the Department of Sports, and it was a great loss once we had heard that. And everyone who knows Dexter knows that he's a committed and dedicated sportsman, and he's always committing himself to the advancement of sports. And so for the department, I know it has been a great loss. It has shook the members of the department, and we do give our condolences and mourn along with the family. But I also want to take the time, Madam Speaker, to give condolences to the Lewis family of Old Road and the Williams family as well, who would have lost loved ones over the last couple of weeks and would have laid them to rest just yesterday. But while there's a lot to mourn, Madam Speaker, and we all heard it this afternoon, there's also some to celebrate. And we've heard about the celebration of having our first two players from St. Kitts who would have made the West Indies squad. From Newtown. But cricket is doing very well, Madam Speaker. Because not only that, we have those two players who would have made the West Indies test squad. We also have Miss Jazara Claxton, who is now captaining the Leeward under 19. Yes. And she has made that squad with another 6 players from St. Kitts Nevis. And I want to take this time out to congratulate the member from number 6 and I guess Senator Clark on the St. Paul's Primary winning the primary school's cricket tournament. Yes, it was an exciting game, I must say. I saw the game, and it came down where both schools tied, and it went to a super over, and it came down to the last ball, 3 runs off of 1 ball. It was Irish Town Primary. Yes, Holiday Smith, yes. Yes, it came down to 3 runs off of 1 ball, Madam Deputy Speaker. And in grand style, the batsman over the boundary for 6. It was an exciting game, and in the end, the St. Paul's Primary came out victorious. But having cricket back into the schools, Madam Speaker, was an excellent feeling. And I'm happy as a Minister of Sports to be able to say that we now have sports back in our schools. Not just cricket. Last year we saw football back into schools, cricket is back into schools, and I want to congratulate the Keon Primary, the netball champion for the netball tournament back in schools. And we see where sports is really taking center stage. And I want to encourage our young sportsmen and women to continue pursuing their dreams in sports. Because as we diversify this economy, we have to recognize that these are the areas that are prone for success. These are the areas that our people can endeavor to really earn a livelihood. For too long, we have not recognized the potential of sports for our people to earn a living. But now we must recognize it. We do have a number of players overseas that are making money from playing sports as a full-time career. And I want to tell our young people, do not give up on your dreams in sports. It is indeed possible. And we see now, again with the Louis brothers, professional sportsmen and women, newly enlisted West Indies players. But we have a lot to celebrate at St. Kitts and Nevis. We had a wonderful music festival. Kudos to the member of number 2, who is not feeling the best right now and so would be absent, but who has worked hard to really put St. Kitts on the map for one of the longest running Caribbean festivals and doing it excellently year after year. And with that, Madam Speaker, I want to thank St. Kitts and Nevis and the people for always stepping up to the plate and being good supporters of their country at every time they're called upon. We are strong people. We are happy people. And St. Kitts and Nevis, no matter how small, we always know we're small, but we're taller.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 4. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As I rise to move a motion for the adjournment of this House, sign and dine, I just wanted to add, on behalf of the General Post Office, to extend condolences and sympathies to the family and friends and work colleagues of Mr. Glenn Dowell, who passed away a few days ago, and he had worked at the post office for about 32 years. He was the face that everyone would see as they entered the post office in the morning and as they left in the afternoon. And so on behalf, as the post falls under one of my portfolios, I wanted to extend, on behalf of the staff, to the friends and family of Mr. Dowell, our deepest sympathies and condolences. And with that, I would like to move that this House stands adjourned, sign and dine.
Seconder, I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1.
I second it, Madam Speaker. May I, of course,
I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 6.
Seek your indulgence in saying a few words in commendation and in support of all that has been transpired at the point of adjournment, especially with regard to the sympathies expressed to those who have been lost. But as a medical doctor and one who would have served for a very long period of time with one called Vincent Williams of Old Road, who was for many, many, many years our radiographer, and who I believe maybe many of you would not know, but who has been retired for some time, but his mortal remains were laid to rest yesterday at the Anglican Cemetery in Middle Island. I want to convey to his family, his children, in particular his wife also served as a nurse for many, many years, retired, and then she passed away. And I just want to bring comfort to the family that Mr. Williams, his life had not been in vain. At one time, he was not only the radiographer. Radiographer is the person who takes x-rays, but to a large extent, especially with us as young doctors, he was able to point out the defects in the human body that were obviously picked up by the x-rays when sometimes we ourselves had not seen it. Because in those days, we did not have a radiologist. And so I want to really commend his family for the support provided for him. He had been in retirement for quite a while, had lost his vision, and had to be cared for. And so I bring comfort to the family of Vincent Williams, apart, of course, from the families of the others who have passed. There was Pam Lewis of Old Road, who was also buried yesterday. I want to also convey to that family, especially she served as one of the security guards at Casper for many, many, many years, and she was the mother of one of our former permanent secretaries, Mr. Lewis. And so I want to really use this opportunity to not only support the others who have gone before me, but also to say congratulations to, of course, St. Paul's Primary School, and also to those who are graduating today from Newton Gown. That's where I was this morning earlier, before I came to the Parliament, Newton Gown, having their graduation exercises today. May it please you, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 6. The question is that this Honourable House stands adjourned. Sign and aye. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House stands adjourned.